All right, let's get right into it. We're about to follow a pretty dark and honestly a fascinating journey into the psyche. The best way to think about this is like a cautionary folktale, a story about what can happen when you really venture into those deep, forgotten corners of yourself. And this right here is our starting point. This quote just sets the stage so perfectly because it challenges our entire notion of being in control. It's suggesting that the I, the self we think is running the show, is actually just a temporary visitor in this massive ancient house it doesn't even begin to understand. So, our traveler starts to go down. But this isn't a physical trip. He's heading inwards, into what the source material calls a subterranean cathedral. This inner space built not from stone, but from all the repressed desires and buried thoughts we try to hide. This is a pilgrimage into the self. So, what's lighting this inner world? Well, it's not some warm, nurturing sun. It's the hollow sun. And what's so interesting here is the description: a psychic scalpel. This light doesn't bring comfort, it dissects. It's this cold, unsettling glow that forces the traveler to see the raw, unfiltered truth that's been hiding just beneath the surface of his identity. Under this cold light, your perspective just shifts dramatically. The traveler starts to feel this immense gravity, this pull from an inner void. And his whole life, his job, his goals, his identity, it all starts to feel like this fleeting, noisy little interruption in a vast, eternal silence. And in this story, that silence demands just one thing: complete surrender. So, just as our traveler is kind of dissolving into this quiet, a shadow falls. A visitor shows up, but this is not just any guest. As it says here, this is the honest guest, an uncanny interrogator who has arrived to challenge absolutely everything. And here's what's so terrifying about this guest. It's the uncanny double. It looks exactly like the traveler, sounds just like him, but it represents this bone-chilling idea that the self he has always cherished, the person he thought he was, is in fact a complete and total stranger, just a mask worn over something else. So, what does this double actually do? Well, it holds up a mirror to a reality the traveler has always denied. It goes through and just dismantles all those self-serving stories he told himself about being a good person. It actually embodies what Freud called the death drive, that deep, unconscious pull towards stillness, back toward that quiet void. Really, this gust is the physical form of everything the traveler has ever pushed down, ever denied. Now, to move forward, the traveler can't fight this double. No, instead, he has to take part in this really strange, transformative ritual. The source calls it the inverted Eucharist, a kind of dark communion that takes place on an unholy altar deep inside himself. And this is the command he's given: swallow the bitter bread of the id. Now, the id, if you remember your psychoanalysis, is where our most primitive, raw, instinctual desires live. So this bread, it's made of everything his conscious mind decided was toxic, shameful, or unacceptable. He has to literally consume his own poison. And this just perfectly illustrates the grim, methodical nature of the whole thing. This is a willing act. He walks up, he receives this bitter nourishment, and he consciously consumes the parts of himself he once threw away. The whole point here is the final step, the total dissolution of that fragile ego that's been guarding the gates all this time. And the consequence of this ritual, it's irreversible. By consuming the bitter bread, the traveler fully integrates his own shadow. It's not some dark shape trailing behind him anymore. It's now a permanent, internal companion. The monster within is finally acknowledged as the true architect of his desires. So what happens right after this communion? Well, the psychological fallout is violent and it's absolute. That carefully constructed image the traveler had of himself, it just can't hold up anymore. The mirror breaks. I mean, what a powerful image, right? The ego ideal is that perfect, aspirational version of ourselves that we're always trying to be. And here, in this moment, that vision is just utterly destroyed. It doesn't crack. It shatters into 1,000 pieces, each one reflecting a different broken truth. And when he looks into these shards, he sees some really harsh realities. Each fragment shows him something he'd been denying. His ideal self was just a costume. His stories of being a good person were illusions. His inner critic is silenced, sure, but now all these repressed memories come flooding into the empty space. It's a complete and total unraveling of his identity. So now the journey shifts.
After shattering the mind's illusions, the traveler goes even deeper into the visceral, gut-level reality of the body. It's a whole new labyrinth, but this one's not made of thoughts. It's made of instincts, pulses, and these primal rhythms. This is a return to something ancient, something primordial. The intellect just gives way to raw, physical sensation. He feels his instincts not as thoughts, but as a vibration deep in his bones, a tarantula in the marrow, as the text says. This is just a complete surrender to the animal self.
And instead of fighting it, he says, a sacred yes. He accepts the pulsing, messy, instinctual reality of his own body. He realizes this isn't a choice, it's an inorganic necessity. And in that acceptance, he finds this strange kind of peace that his striving, anxious ego could never, ever have offered him. So our traveler finally emerges. But let's be really clear here. He's not some triumphant hero coming back from battle. He hasn't conquered his demons. He has become them. He is now a living symbol of his journey, marked forever by the abyss. The internal conflict is over. And why? Not because the good side won, but because the war itself was a fiction to begin with. By welcoming the monster, by integrating his own internal rot, the traveler has achieved a very strange, very disturbing new kind of wholeness.
And this just perfectly illustrates the final transformation. I mean, look at the contrast. The striving ego is replaced by ancient silence. The fortress of logic becomes a haunted house with no floor, a place of total vulnerability. And that repressed beast is no longer a threat to be managed, it's recognized as the rightful host, the true owner of the house.
And that leaves us with this final, really provocative question. This whole journey, this cautionary tale, it forces us to look inward. It asks us to consider the shadows in our own basements. And it poses a deeply unsettling thought. What if being truly whole isn't about defeating the monster, but about finally unlocking the door and inviting it inside?